Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking into the shadows, you could say, of the Dublin Hellfire Club. If you like getting up to speed fast on interesting history, well, we've got an article here that really digs into this legendary group.
Yeah, the name itself, Hellfire Club, it conjures up all sorts of images, doesn't it? Secret meetings, maybe something properly sinister up on Montpelier Hill. It's really become part of Dublin's folklore. You mentioned the hill. People think ghosts.
Exactly. All those creepy stories about what supposedly happened up there, they've been around for ages, but what was really going on? So our mission for this deep dive is to try and pick apart the legends, the urban myths from, the reality of the Dublin Hellfire Club. We want to figure out what our source material actually tells us. There are just so many tales out there. We want to find the key stuff. Okay, so let's get into it. What's the first big thing we need to grasp about these Hellfire Clubs?
Well, this source makes a point that the Dublin one wasn't some kind of bizarre one-off. It was actually just one of several clubs like it. They were popping up in Ireland and Britain around the 17th, 18th centuries. It was sort of a trend, among certain people.
Right, okay. So not this single mysterious entity. What was the point then? Why did people join? What were these rich, powerful guys actually doing?
The article suggests they were basically meeting spots for the elite. You have to remember, this was a time of really strict religious rules, a very rigid society. So these clubs offered a space to be a bit more, uninhibited. Think lots of drinking, maybe activities frowned upon by the church, parties.
Yeah.
Just generally pushing boundaries.
So a way for the wealthy to kind of let loose, escape the norms of the day. Now, Montpelier Hill itself, the location, it had a history even before the Hellfire Club showed up, didn't it? It wasn't their first spot.
That's right, yeah. The source explains that the building up there started life as just a small hunting lodge. It was commissioned by William Connolly. Now, he was a huge deal. Speaker of the Irish House of Commons, seriously wealthy, probably one of the richest men in Ireland in the 18th century.
Wow.
And his connections, Trinity College, Dublin, the Irish Parliament, it shows the kind of circles involved.
And didn't the building itself cause some trouble right from the get-go? Something about the construction, even before the club.
Exactly. When they built the lodge, they actually demolished or used stones from an ancient cairn, basically a prehistoric burial mound. And the local people were apparently furious. They thought it would anger the spirits, curse the site. So you already had this layer of superstition and paranormal association hanging over the place before the Hellfire Club even set foot there.
Which brings us nicely to Richard Parsons. He founded the Dublin Hellfire Club. The source calls him pretty controversial.
Oh, yeah. Ferociously controversial, I think was the phrase. And he apparently had an interest in the dark arts, the occult. Montpelier Hill wasn't their main hangout at first, but it became a secondary spot after Connolly died.
And Parsons seems like he enjoyed annoying the religious authorities in Dublin.
That's putting it mildly. The source mentions conflicts with both Catholic and Protestant churches. He had strong opinions, wasn't afraid to share them, and he loved these outrageous practical jokes, often aimed right at church figures.
There's a story in the article about a clergyman, Samuel Madden, also a Trinity guy. Sounds like quite the confrontation.
It does. Apparently Parsons summoned Madden sort of on official business and then just stripped off in front of him, just to humiliate him.
Seriously?
Yeah. And interestingly, Madden wasn't exactly quiet himself. He spoke out against Parsons and the club. So, bad blood there from the start, a real clash.
Okay, with that kind of behavior, you can see how the wild stories started. Playing cards with the devil, that's a classic Hellfire Club image, isn't it?
It really is. And it shows how fear, maybe misunderstanding too, can blow up these exclusive, maybe just eccentric gatherings into full-blown supernatural legends. It probably reflects what people worried about back then, seeing behavior they didn't approve of.
Absolutely. And there's the other one, too, about a priest having to exorcise a demon from a black cat that supposedly attacked someone. Our source says these are almost certainly, just stories, bogus, frightening urban myths, maybe designed to make the club seem evil.
But, and this is a crucial point the article makes, the actual reality for some members, well, it could be just as disturbing, maybe more so because it was real. We should talk about Lord Santry.
Ah, yes. Lord Santry, great-grandson of James Barry, another Trinity man from way back. He had this reputation, didn't he, for, extreme violence and heavy drinking.
A really dangerous mix. The article says it often led to genuinely criminal, brutal behavior when he was drunk.
And the example given is just awful. Murdering a servant who was sick in bed.
It's horrific. It really grounds the story, We get caught up in the devil stories, but the real violence could be just stomach-churning.
The article says he forced the servant to drink a whole bottle of brandy and then set him on fire. The trial after that caused a massive public outcry, understandably, and it really damaged the Hellfire Club's reputation even more.
Exactly. And what's really telling is that Santry, initially at least, kind of got away with it. His wealth, his connections, they protected him at first.
So his status shielded him.
For a time, yeah. He manipulated the situation. But eventually, his luck ran out. He was later exiled from Ireland for another murder.
Wow. Okay, so Santry's crimes were definitely a big nail in the coffin for the Dublin Hellfire Club. What else led to its end?
Well, Santry's notoriety didn't help. Plus, the authorities were starting to pay more attention, trying to arrest members for things like blasphemy. And then Parsons himself died, and apparently 2 other members died in pretty grim circumstances. Seems like the whole thing just fizzled out under the weight of the controversy and the real-world consequences.
Interesting. The article notes that other Hellfire Clubs did pop up later in Ireland, kind of inspired by the Dublin one. Were they as bad?
The source suggests not, really. Other clubs formed, but none quite captured that same level of infamy for violence and outright controversy as the Montpelier Hill group. That Dublin club, maybe because of the location, the personalities involved, like Parsons and Santry, it just held a unique, dark place in people's minds.
Right. Now, the article brings in another angle. From an author, David Ryan, who's researched them a lot, he kind of pushes back against the simple devil worshippers idea. This bit is really fascinating.
It really is. Ryan's take is that they weren't necessarily worshiping the devil, like literally. He calls them free thinkers who believed in neither heaven nor hell. Now, he doesn't excuse the violence of people like Santry, but he suggests many members use this outrageous behavior, this hellfire persona, partly to challenge the church's power, to promote more modern thinking.
So the whole hellish vibe might have been partly an act, a deliberate provocation to shock the establishment.
That's what Ryan suggests, yeah. The outrageous moniker, he calls it. It was meant to cause a stir, annoy the pious. And he even argues that, despite the awful actions of some, in other ways, their intellectual curiosity, their questioning of dogma, they were maybe a bit ahead of their time.
It's quite a shift in perspective thinking of these guys, these supposed hellraisers, as actually being quite intellectual. The article mentions their education.
Definitely. Many were highly educated. Graduates from Trinity College Dublin, Cambridge even. They were apparently discussing philosophy, science, the new ideas emerging at the time. And that alone would have put them at odds with traditional religious Georgian society.
Right.
They were wrestling with concepts that challenged the old ways of thinking.
It really highlights how people interpret things based on the knowledge of their era, doesn't it? What might have looked like dark arts or Satanism back then could have just been early science or philosophical debate that wasn't widely understood yet.
Precisely. The article makes that connection very clearly. A lot of what used to seem supernatural was just the natural world not yet explained. And this clash between new scientific ideas and the old religious explanations probably fueled a lot of the fear and the rumors around the Hellfire Club.
Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. The Dublin Hellfire Club on Montpelier Hill. It seems like it's this really complex blend. You've got the documented history, wealth, rebellion, some truly awful violence, but then it's all tangled up with centuries of ghost stories and urban legends.
Exactly. The reality, based on this source, seems to point towards a group of educated men, definitely ill-behaved, some criminally so, but maybe driven more by wanting to shock society and challenge the church rather than actual devil worship.
Yeah.
That satanic delinquent label. Probably came from the collision between their intellectual side and the fact that science wasn't fully understood by everyone back then.
So for you listening, hoping to get a quick but solid understanding of this, hopefully there have been a few aha moments there. That contrast between the wild myths and the possibly more complicated reality of these club members, it really makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. And maybe here's something to chew on. How often do historical groups or events get twisted over time? By rumor, by how society wants to see them. What does that tell us about how we understand the past, especially the motivations of people who, push against the norms? Maybe it's worth thinking more about how our views of controversial figures actually form and stick around.